All right, today is Thursday, the 4th of February. We're going to do two things today. First, we're going to build a playground. And we're going to build a playground and we're going to create a BMI calculator inside of the playground. All right? Then after that, we're going to actually build the first iteration of this ourselves. It's not going to look exactly like the one that I showed you, but it'll look close. All right? So what I'd like you to do is get started with a new playground. Rather than my playground, I'm just going to call mine BMI Playground or Playground. Keep it set to iOS. Click Next. Probably you'll want to save this onto your desktop. Says I already have one. Yeah, I'll replace it. That's fine. And the first thing you can do is leave the import UI kit line in, but get rid of everything else. So in other words, have it look just like this. Okay? Now, what I did was if you weren't here last week, what we did was we went over one of the tutorials from RayWenderlich.com. All right? And we went over the one where he did a tip calculator, but he did it by building a class first. So I based what I did off of that. Does that make sense to everyone? All right? And I'm going to tell you that if you say, why'd you do this, why'd you do that? Because I did. There's going to be at least one of you might have a question, why'd you do this or why'd you do that? I'm not sure. All right? I will tell you that I built this. I built it really slowly. And just like I recommend with students, what I did and what we're going to do is we're going to build this, and as we build it, we're going to create our variables, we're going to create our init function, and we're going to create our calculate BMI. All right, and then we're going to actually calculate it and make sure that it works, type of thing. All right, so again, this is how I did it. So I literally wrote a class in here that I called BMI calculator. There's my little color wheel again. There we go. All right. Come on. I don't want that extra curly in there, but it's not letting me remove it right now. There we go. All right. So I had 4 variables that I used in this program. Height, weight, BMI, and something I just called status. That was going to hold either underweight, overweight, or of optimal weight. Okay? So when I created them in here, I said var height equals, and I just said 0.0. Var weight equals 0.0. Var BMI, I'm a good little soldier, so I'm lining stuff up, equals 0.0. And finally, once I get my cursor back, there we go, var status equals, and the empty string. So those are the variables that I'm using. I'm not going to go and write a lot of comments in here. My guess is since I'm using the words height, weight, BMI, and status, you all understand what those mean. If you don't like the word status and you'd rather have it called BMI status, not a problem. All right? And again, the way that the author wrote that tip calculator was he literally set it up so that in here he had what's called an init method. So did I. Now, I'm asking this. Take a look up there. That init is the equivalent of a constructor that we have in Java. So looking at that, can somebody tell me Considering, again, it's the equivalent of a constructor in Java. What does this mean?
Two arguments.
That means that when you create a BMI calculator object, which is what we're going to do at the very end, you'll have to pass it in two doubles, a height and a weight. And I didn't have to make them doubles. We could have made them ints, but I made them doubles because we want the BMI to be a double too. So just taking a double and dividing it by a double. All right. Plus, if you go, you know, I don't weigh 170 pounds. I'm 169.7. You know, you can do that if you really are so inclined to do that. All right. Okay. Now, if you notice, what I did here was I called the names height and weight the same thing as they're called here. You didn't have to do that, but since I did that, I can't say height equal height and weight equal weight. What do I have to do? No. What's the magic word? It's not this, like we have in Java. What is the word? Self. We'll have to start out by saying self.height equal height. I'm going to type that in, self.height equal height and self.weight equal weight. All right? And once we put those two lines in, again, kind of going back to what Amber said, had I called this H and W, I wouldn't need the word self there. Then I could just say height equals H, weight equals W. That would have been just fine. All right? But I want you to get used to using that self variable because you've used this for so long with other languages, so why not put it in there? All right? So what that means is now when we create that, we're going to pass in those two numbers. Well, we're not going to pass in a BMI because that wouldn't make any sense. Does that make sense to everybody? That's what we're calculating in the program. And since we're calculating BMI in the program, we also don't know what the person's status is. We don't know that. All right? So I'm going to put 3 function calls in here, but after I put in the second and the third, I'm going to comment them out. So we can just concentrate on the first one. All right? So I've got in here BMI equals, and I just called it what it was. Calculate BMI. And I don't have to pass in anything. And then I said status equals, and I called it calculate BMI status. And finally, I just had this thing I called print all info. And literally what that last one is going to do, that print all info, that's going to print information down here to the console. All right, it's going to do that. You'll notice I'm already getting errors in there because I've got 3 function calls where I haven't created those functions yet. That's why I'm getting those errors. All right. Is there anything that's being done in there that does not make sense to anyone? So when we create a BMI calculator object, we'll have to pass it in a height and a weight. Once we have that height and weight, all right, once we have those, we will call calculate BMI. And that's going to return the BMI which we're going to put in there. Once we've got the actual BMI, we'll call calculate BMI status. All right? And then once we're done with that, we'll just print out everything that we have or everything we've created, whatever you want to call it. So for right now, I'm going to take these 2 lines and I'm going to comment them out. All right? Then I won't have error messages all over the place as I keep going here. Okay? So I want to call this function. So do you remember? It's func followed by the name of the function. Oops. And there's nothing passed in. Now I want to return a double. How do I do that? From where I am right now, I want to return a double. So what is the syntax for doing that? Well, you should know this. You've written some of this stuff already. It's not colon double. You're partway right. The word double is in there. But remember, it's a minus sign followed by a greater than sign followed by the return type. So that says that calculate BMI has no parameters and returns a double. Notice I'm getting an error message here because there's no return statement. And it's expecting a double to be returned, and there's no code in there. That's why that red line is there, or the red dot is there right now. All right? And I went out, maybe you did this, maybe you didn't, but I typed in here return weight times 703 divided by. Now, when we've worked in Java, we've used math.pow. There is no math, bless you, there is no math.pow here, but there's a pow. So pow height 2.0. Can somebody tell me what is this? And I spelled weight wrong, that's why I'm getting the error. But what does that say? That's height times height, right? Height squared. We could have put in there, instead of this, I could have put parens here and just said height times height. I could have done that as well. All right, I've got two errors in here right now. I need another paren, and I need to spell weight correctly. The good news is, when you look right now, at least on this one, there's nothing indicating that there's any error. All right? So if I wanted to do this right now, okay, I could come in here and I could, outside of here, and this is what we're going to end up doing in just a couple minutes, but I can come down in here and I can create myself. So I'm going to say let Mary equal BMI calculator. And as Luke said, we'll have to give Mary a height. And I'll give her, I don't know, 72 inches. She's tall lady. And I'll give her a weight. And we'll say 111 pounds. Okay? Notice there's still no errors. Okay? Why am I not getting anything to print out? Well, I am. It's showing me what her BMI is. I already know then that works. Key in some code and test it. Key in some more code and test it. I'm still walking around. I'm not going to pick on anyone. I'm not. But I watch a lot of you type in your entire program and then start testing. That's really not a wise way to do it. I'm going to fix that too because it bugs the hell out of me that it's that many decimal places. What bugs me even more is that Swift doesn't have a really good way to convert to 2 decimal places. All right? But there's sort of a hack that's sort of Swift and sort of Objective-C that I found, and we'll use that. So we'll fix that in just a bit. Notice there's nothing down here in the console because we haven't done a print statement yet. But remember, when you do this and you run and you use a playground, it immediately shows you the result. Okay? You hopefully can look at that and know, well, Mary's going to be underweight. Because again, if you've got a BMI that's less than 18 or 18.5 or whatever the heck it was, you're underweight. All right? Any questions on anything up till this point? Anything that doesn't make sense? Yes, sir.
I was just wondering, why do we pass into the init function the doubles? Is it because of that lat function with Mary?
Do you mean, why are we using these two variables?
Yeah, because aren't you already passing it into the height and
We're
weight?
passing it in here and here. All right, these are called named parameters right here. We don't have to.
It goes into the init from the BMI calculator.
Yes, basically.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, gotcha.
Yes.
You have a semicolon after the empty string and status. Is that necessary?
I put a semicolon where?
After status.
After status.
The empty string and status.
Var status.
Var
The
status.
variables
No,
at the
I
top.
shouldn't have had one there. Thank you.
Okay.
We'll get rid of that. Remember, it doesn't hurt in this language if you put a semicolon in, but it's discouraged to ever use one, so thank you. All right? So right now, we know what Mary's BMI is. Okay? Now, the other thing, and I'm going to do this on here so you don't have it in front of you. I understand that. But I'm going to go and bring up a window here, and I'm going to type in BMI calculator. All right, I'm just going to grab the first one that's here, and it says your height in feet, 6 feet 0 inches, and it's 111 pounds. And it says the BMI should be 15.1. That's from a, quote, professional BMI calculator, unquote. So it looks like, at least like we're really in the ballpark. All right? So we've done that, and now it's time to take where we've got the status there, and we'll uncomment that one because we'll write that one. And please look up on the screen. Notice it'll look similar to this. It'll be func, calculate BMI status. But we're not returning a double here. We're returning status, which is a string. So we're going to put here func, calculate BMI status, paren, greater than sign, minus sign, greater than sign, string. And we'll start to put it in there. All right? So that's how we're going to write this one. All right, and hopefully, again, I get the red dot there because it's telling me you're not returning anything and you said you're going to return a string. All right, and we are going to return a string in just a couple minutes. All right, but again, I went back to the specs and I said this: if BMI is less than 18, status equals underweight. Oops. Now, and I'm just telling you this, many of you might think, well, next check for overweight. And I could do that. All right? So I could check for overweight, right? I could say else if it's greater than 25. And actually, that's a better way to do it. I could check for the optimal weight now. I could say else if BMI is greater than or equal to 18 and BMI is less than or equal to 25. I could do that, right? But if I check for underweight, which is less than 18, and I check for overweight, which is greater than 25, all that's left is optimal weight. And all I'm trying to tell you is you don't have to put 3, an if and an else, if and an else. You only, you don't need 3 of them like that. All right, you don't need to write that much. So now I'm just going to say else if, and I guess there is an if and an else, if and an else, but I'm going to write here else if BMI is greater than 25, status equals overweight, else status, status equals optimal weight. All right, I'm still got the error there because why? What do I have to do now? Return status. And technically, now when you look at this, status is a global variable, isn't it? Because it's declared on the top of the program. I didn't even need to do this. I could have just said here, right here. I didn't need either of these. I could have just said calculate BMI, and I could just say calculate BMI status. What I'm returning are already global variables. So really, there is no reason for me to go and return anything because it's all global. The reason that I did it like this, not to screw with you or anything like that, but later I might decide I don't want those variables to be global. And now I'm going to be better off using the return statement. All right? So now, again, notice nothing in here right now is nothing is red, so I'm not getting any errors. And it's also not printing it out. Why? Because I didn't uncomment that line. I just uncommented it right here. I had it commented out. underweight. 15.05, etc. Once we do it to 1 or 2 decimal places, it'll be 15.10 and underweight. All right? Please leave yours the way that it is, but I just want to show you, if you don't understand what I just said to you, please look up on the screen here for a second, please, everybody. These variables that are right here, these are considered to be global variables, global to the program, because they are these 4 variables. They are defined outside of any method. That means they're known to the program, and I don't have to pass them back and forth. All right? So you can leave yours exactly the way it is. There's nothing wrong with it. But I just want to show you this. I could have also done it like this. So I could come down here and not say BMI equals. I could just say calculate BMI, and I could just say calculate BMI status, and then come down here, remove that return statement, and not return anything. I just would say here BMI equals that, and then I'd come here and I wouldn't return anything. And now I'll have to come down here and say, you know, I got everything. All right, I don't need that return statement anymore. All right. What I've done by doing that is I've got a little bit less code. All right. There was nothing wrong with the way that I told you to do it. There's nothing wrong with doing it this way. You could actually make a case that the way I just did it here is cleaner. The problem is as you're writing code, please don't get used to the idea of declaring every variable at the top of your program. If you've got variables that you're going to be using all over the place in the program, it's okay to make them global. But if you've got variables that are only going to be being used in one method, let's say, why should you make those global? All right, so there are almost an infinite number of ways this could be written. All right, I just want you to understand that. So now I want to come in, I want to call my print all info. All right, again, I'm going to get an error message because it hasn't been written yet. So func print all info, which is requiring no parameters, and it's not going to return anything. All right, and let me do this. I'm going to hit enter a bunch of times just so I can move this up on the screen. Bless you. Now, what I want to have happen right here is I want the stuff that's here, I want it to go and print out to the console area down below. I actually want that there. All right? So the first two, the height and the weight, are pretty simple. I'm going to say this. Print inputted height. Look up on the screen. Does everybody remember? If I want to print the name of a variable inside of a print statement like that, I put backslash and then I put the variable name into parentheses like this. And I'll put a backslash n after it so I print my next thing on a new line. Now, how do I know whether or not it worked? Well, right now it looks kind of like it didn't. Oh, yes, it did. Look, inputted height, 72.0. So I know that one worked. Okay? Does everybody realize that the next statement is exactly the same as this one, except I make those two things W's? So if it's easier for you, rather than typing it in again to copy and paste, do that. It's a different editor than the one we're used to using, so maybe it's not easier for you. Maybe it's easier for you to just type it in. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come in here and type in print inputted weight backslash and then in parens weight backslash n like that. So now there's my height and there's my weight. In fact, I don't even want a backslash n after these. I want these to butt up against each other because otherwise it's going to be too much info. So I'm going to get rid of those backslash n's. I'm only going to put one at the end after status. So I'm going to get rid of that backslash n, and I'm going to get rid of that backslash n. So now these two things are butting up against each other. So inputted height and inputted weight. I think somebody asked the question last week, can we add more stuff in this? Can we put the person's name in there, etc., their sex? You put anything in there you want to put in there. All right? That's totally up to you. All right? We're going to finish this, and when we get done, we're going to basically take this and just turn it into a regular iOS app. So we're going to actually build a single view application of this. Now, if you were having problems with the Android one, the code really isn't any different. Syntactically, you might have to make some changes. All right? So what you will basically have part one of both assignments done by the end of this class. Your job, and you've got until the 14th, I think we said, is to go in and actually make a copy of it and start playing with different things. Next week, we're going to look at something that's called auto layout in here. And that's going to make sure that whether you have a thing that's in portrait or landscape, the stuff lines up. All right? Maybe you've seen this already. I still remember the first time I did this, that I went and I ran the emulator. There's nothing here. There's not a frickin' thing here. And I was mad. Everything's right. So I ran it again. Because God knows if you run it the second time, it'll all appear. So I ran it again and nothing happened. So I ran it a third time. And I thought, maybe it's me. So I walked away for a while. I came back and realized if I just went and moved up, it was at the top of the screen. But I was at the bottom of the screen, so I couldn't see it. So I'd been there all the time. All right, maybe you've done the same thing. All right, so we printed out two things. The next thing we want to print out is the BMI. But don't type what I'm typing, please. Do not type what I'm typing. Calculated BMI. Oops, not BML. Because if I leave it like that, I get that same ugly number that we saw before. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 decimal places. I don't think that looks very professional. All right? We could use a round function type of thing, but this is what I found, and I'm even going to write down on here. You don't have to type this in. I'm going to type in though the URL from where I went to Stack Overflow to find this. All right? And I watched again where people had arguments. Do it this way. No, that's stupid. Do it this way. No, that's even dumber. And going back and forth on different things. All right? So let me write and show you at least in here how I ended up doing it. All right? I did not use the backslash thing that we have here. So I'm going to get rid of all this stuff at the end. All right, so I'm going to say calculated BMI with a space, then a plus sign. All right? Then the word string and the word format, colon, double quote, %.2f, BMI. And lo and behold, if you take a look at it now, up on the screen, it looks a lot nicer because it's 15.05. We could have even done it to a single. If it makes you feel better to put it to a single decimal place, instead of 0.2 like I used, use 0.1. There's more than one way of doing this, just so you know. All right? So, before we go on, let me just quickly, I'm going to take a second to type all this in, but I'm going to do it anyway. All right, so this was, I put in here my notes, C URL, you don't have to type this, http://stackoverflow.com/questions/2733 8573. Now is where I get to practice typing. Rounding a double value to X number of decimal places in Swift. That's the URL if you are interested. You don't have to type that in, but just so you know. If it's easier for you, and I'm starting to do more of this because I've always been, move stuff together. But here, I'm actually just going to literally put some more room in here. It doesn't change it all the way the program runs, but it might make it a little bit easier for you when you're going back and taking a look at what you've done. All right? So the last thing I want to do is I want to come back in here and I want to say, again, print BMI status Now, when I do this, I will put 2 \n, and you'll see why in just a moment. So now when you look down on the bottom here, I just moved it up. Inputted height 72 inches. Inputted weight 111 pounds. Calculated BMI 15.05. BMI status underweight. If I wanted to, I could add more things to this. In other words, I could have put inputted height 72.0. I could have manually added the word inches right there, correct? I could have manually added the word pounds right there. If that makes it easier for you, you can do that. Okay? I'm more concerned that you've got the code and that everybody in this room gets theirs to work. And that people who aren't here hopefully have the wherewithal, all right, to go and watch the tape. Now, I'm going to come in here just so you see this. I'm going to create 2 more BMI calculator objects. So I'm going to let Stan, I tried to come up with people who we didn't have their names, BMI calculator, calculator, and his height will be, let's make it, we'll make it 72 again, that's fine, and his weight will be, say, 160 pounds. Now when you look down on the bottom, now notice what we have. Stan, 72, 160, 21.7, optimal weight. When you are testing this stuff, does it make sense to you that if the 3 types of weights you can have, underweight, overweight, and optimal weight, you should force all 3 of those conditions to take place so you're sure that that's what prints out. So, years ago, we had a guy who lived right across the street from us who was one of my dad's friends. And the funny thing is, he's a real little guy. He was maybe 5 feet 5 inches tall, but he was built like a tank. And his name was Milt. So, I let Milt equal BMI calculator. And I made Milt's height 72 also. But I made Milt's weight 333 pounds. He's a big one. So there we've now tested all of them. Because I still think people get caught up in here. When I watch some of you, you're more caught up with things like your interface. Doesn't look right. It's not the right color. I need a better font. It needs to be bigger. That's not really what's that important. You've always got time afterward where you can go back in and you can do that stuff. All right? I'm more concerned that you understand what's going on here. And this is I took a program purposely. You may or may not remember, we wrote this in Java. You wrote this. I don't remember if it was an assignment or we did it in class. I don't remember. I don't care. All right? And we might have even done it in C#. All right? but the logic is the same regardless of the language you use. The only thing that may change is the syntax. All right? Does anyone have any questions on anything that we just went through? Is there anything that doesn't make sense? Because this is your time to ask.
Could you go up?
Let me close this. Yes.
Okay, so when we're doing our if statement, we don't need the parentheses, but what if we have two arguments in that if statement? Would we need it then?
When you say two arguments, like if you had
I'm
an
sorry,
and or
two
something,
conditions in it, like say if it's less than 18.
and greater than 25 or something,
Yeah,
is that what you,
something like
no,
that. Just leave
No.
them out.
you virtually, almost the only time in this language that you need parentheses are for function parameters. All right? Most of the time, other than that, you don't. I mean, there are exceptions to that, but most of the time. All right? Any other questions? All right, I've got 3:43. It's a little early, but I want to make sure has everybody, and if Juan's still fixing hers up, does everybody else, does yours work? All right, then let's take a break. We'll come back at 4. We're just going to start all over again, and we're going to build this as an iOS app. Now, if you want, you can leave the playground open because you could copy some code in. If you want to do that, I'm just going to start all over again. All right, does she need something?
No, she's got an error, but she should be able to figure it out.
Okay.
Because I get mixed up when you said just leave everything like you did before.
Yes.
And then you change and then I'm missing a return.
Well, then what does that tell you? What do you need to add then?
What's it? It says.
If it's missing a return, then you better add a return in there.
But doesn't need one. Okay, it's you're telling it to return a string, right? And it's saying you're missing that.
Dwan, when you look up here on the screen, okay?
You see it? Yeah.
This says call this function with no return.
Yes.
So if on yours, if you had a return here, so if you had a minus followed by something, there'll be an error. Or if you have a return in here, there'll be an error. Since I took them out here, there are no parameters in here at all, and there are no return statements. And in my prototype, or my header here, there's no minus sign followed by a greater than sign with a type on any of them, if you did it the way that I showed. All right? I'll come right back to this. I want to stop the tape on this, all right? So I want to stop the tape.